Billy, there's a ton of opinions flying around regarding this team lately. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be addressing many of the issues that seem to be common from a lot of Red Wings fans. So we're going to kick this off just to start. I want to ask you guys a question. Jump down to the YouTube comments. Before we even get into all these points, I want you to answer two questions, and it's going to come down to the thumbnail that you clicked on. So part one, what is your goal for the team this year? What is your goal for the team this year? Part two is, with that goal in mind, what changes would you make to this team from any aspect? Doors wide open. Anything you want to say. What changes would you make in order to achieve that goal? And what I was talking about with Billy before we started recording this video is the reason why I want to ask it this way is because I think we're gonna have a lot of conflicting answers with a solution, but a lot of times that's because we have different goals for what we're trying to achieve. What is your goal for the team right now, and what changes would you make in order to achieve that goal? We're going to go through what we have as a little checklist of some opinions and some thoughts that some we share, some we disagree with, but many that we've been hearing from a lot of you guys, not only in our comments, but in our Discord, in the live streams, or just across Twitter or wherever, of just opinions on the team and thoughts. And we're going to give our thoughts on those before we give our actual ones. Where do you want to start, Billy?
Let's start off with coaching. I feel like you can start from the head down a little bit of the organizations. No one's talking about Steve though. So let's go down a little further, right? And the next thing you come up with is coaching. You're looking at Lalone. And we went into this season, and during this offseason, you and I specifically talked about what could these lines be. There was a lot of speculation. That's kind of the offseason grind for us, is, speculating on that. And we talked about how there are a lot of different players that can fit into a lot of different spots. We made a lot of free agency signings. We've got a lot of people who can play center, but they can also play wing. We've got Kopp playing center and wing. We got Raz playing center and wing. Veleno playing center and wing. And when you have options like that, it's going to lead to a lot of jumbling. We have jumbled so much through the entire season that we have never locked down a true number one line. And I think that's concerning. It's something you brought up in our watch along with the Jets, and it didn't even really dawn on me that that's true. Like, you kind of have Larkin and Raymond locked up there, but we've had Veleno, DeBrincat, Raz,
Fabry.
Yeah, Fabry up
Who
there
hasn't
too.
played on the top line at this point of the season? It'd be a shorter list to list people who haven't played on the top line at this point.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really difficult when the players aren't able to create that chemistry, even on like a single line. Most other teams across the NHL, I feel like, do lock in their top number one line, and it's kind of jumbling their middle six and their bottom three kind of cycle out due to some injuries. And I think something that really plays a part in this is introducing Kane. I think Kane is jumbling the jumbling. We didn't know where he was going to fit in. We weren't sure about how fast he was going to be, how much his health was going to be a concern, how much his hockey sense could really bring to a middle six. We talked about, the line number 2, the line number 3, and just when we could have possibly been figuring out in it was like game 21 or 22 we finished, is when we signed Kane, somewhere around that range. So you're about a quarter of the way through the season, when you're hoping that you start to find some pairs of people that can go well together. You introduce a huge X factor, a huge question mark into how this is going to continue to affect the team.
I'm with you there. I asked the question earlier. I don't believe adding Kane overall was a negative, but what I do believe is that the closest we had to an established top line was Larkin and Cat. The third was mixed up a little bit, but we knew that we were trying to make something work with Larkin and DeBrincat. And it has, by adding Kane into the equation, the obvious, the immediate, let's put Kane and Cat back together, which happened. And then they swapped it around and they swapped it back. And now they got all three of them together in the power play. So now adding Kane into the equation has definitely made it so we are our sure thing isn't even sure anymore. Mm-hmm. We're everybody's swapping this Jets game had Kane and Cat uh, shown as line three, and Larkin up there up top with Fabry and Raymond. Like it's so jumbled that is a concern of that's a concern that is a part of what I agree with. That there's not enough time for any sort of chemistry, and we both got really excited. You're like, hey, I love that they're trying all this new stuff. You know, you keep saying, you got all these free agencies or free agent signings that we brought in together. You know, you're gonna have to mix it up and try to find what works. But we're getting kind of deeper into the season now. The fact that you haven't found something to stick is concerning. So is that coaching? Is that too much jumbling? Is it actually not working? I mean, we don't know. We're not in the locker room. For all we know, these players aren't building chemistry. But for all you know, you could form the opinion or the not the I shouldn't say opinion, but the speculation that maybe there's a line that's working and they get broken up because the coaching is too quick to pull the parachute on it. It's like, all right, that one didn't work. Let's try something else. But maybe those guys were kind of liking playing together. They didn't score yet, but maybe it wasn't enough time. It just. Yeah, it feels like it's a lot. So everybody who's been bringing that up, I see where you're coming from.
I think it's fair speculation to wonder if they're, pulling the chute too fast on some lines. But another thing that is completely speculation on my part is I've had this question about Derek Lalone, and maybe it's just because we have Dan Campbell and I've just gotten like a taste of a different style of leadership. But we have talked about how this team has slow starts in some nights, and I will say specifically tonight in the game against the Jets, when we're recording this, it honestly kind of felt like a lack of passion. It felt like our lack of energy was also just reflecting on the team. Like it never felt exciting. It never felt like the team was buzzing and ready to go, and everyone was kind of like clicking together at almost any point through what we watched. And I think that can come down to coaching or team leadership. I just, this is my personal little gripe, I guess. I can't see Lalone being extremely motivational or, being like intimidating the way that I can see other coaches across the league. I'm not calling for Lalone's job. That is absolutely not what I'm doing here. I think that he just offers a different style of leadership potentially that, I mean, we're not in the locker room, but
and that was going to be my point is I've heard of coaching situations where, when the door shuts, they're in coach mode. Like the cameras are on mode. Think of Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
He's not doing that at the podium. That's not our business. What happens in that locker room, you're not hearing about. You're not getting post-game victory celebrations like you get with the Lions, because what he does in the locker room is different than what we get in interviews and at the podium and everything like that. I'm not trying to say Lalone's Bill Belichick, but I'm just trying to provide the most obvious example I can think of as, do you think Bill is in that locker room talking to his players the same way he's talking to us at the podium? Absolutely not.
No, but he could be motivating in a different manner where it feels like Lalone it feels bland.
I don't think you can judge a coach's character or his motivation style or his coaching style off of everything that he's doing in front of the camera. Some of them you can, some will wear it, they'll wear it out in the open for everyone to see. There's your Dan Campbell example, is who he is in the locker room. We get that, front and center and everything. There are coaches, there are GMs, there are staff members that are on camera and in front of you, in front of everybody. You're going to get this version because, frankly, it's not your business. And when you get in that locker room, when it comes to like the passion, I think it's a morale. I don't think it's a passion issue that's going to stem from a coaching or the loan. When this team scores and when this team's winning, when we're on those hot stretches, it looks super passionate. They celebrate hard. They look happy. They're having a great time. I think morale is down. I think that's what I would chalk up to what I'm seeing where, it looks like a slow start. They're getting their butts kicked some games they're not, and they're just also can't score. They lose 1 or 2-1 or 1-0. So if I'm going to point to anything there, while I do have concerns with coaching that we'll talk about later, mine isn't going to be with Lalone yet, other than the line jumbling, which I assume he has final say on. That's my concern with Lalone. When it comes to the players being motivated or anything like that. This is something I firmly believe. I don't think that's Salone's job. You're a
Yeah.
professional athlete. I want to be very clear. If you are being paid what you're being paid, and this is your full-time job as a professional athlete, and you need like the coach, who your coach is, determines whether or not you are motivated at all, you're probably the problem more than the coach. The coach can help, but like I don't think I don't even want to say anyone on this
You're
team.
the problem. It's you.
Yeah, I don't want anybody on this team to like. I don't want anybody on that team to be classified as someone that doesn't appear motivated, because I don't think that's the case. I think morale's down, and frankly, I get it. My morale's down watching this team. Like it's tough to be. It's one thing to be losing a bunch of games 5-4, because then you could point to something. You could point to your defense, or in a lot of cases, you could point to your goalie. You have things you can point to, but you're also watching an exciting game. Losing 1-0, 2-1. Just feels like your team is doing nothing. That's kind of what you're dealing with lately. Unless you have anything else on that, let's jump into the next thing that we've been hearing a lot about.
And that's going to be the AHL call-ups or potential waiving and cutting of some of the NHL players that we currently have. And I know that this is a big one. This is probably it's probably the easiest maybe on our list, potentially, on just saying like do this or do that. It might be the most the most splitting is what I would say, like controversial. Like you really believe one or the other, and it comes down to the question you asked the starters: what's your goal for the team? There are a lot of people who have the goal for this team to just, not tank, but put in young guys and grow, and don't sign.
Not prioritize winning.
Yeah, not prioritize winning. Yeah, I would say that. And other ones that say like, we got a chance this year. Let's build a culture. Let's try to win. Let's see what comes out of it and make the playoffs. Who knows what happens? But we're really kind of talking about two AHL players the most, in Berggren and Edvinsson. I know I've heard other people even say Lombardi. I think that's very aggressive, I guess you could say. Lombardi, it feels like, would be one of the ones that probably take another year or two, just based on what I know about them. We don't really watch them. We don't have hard opinions on these players or know what they can or cannot be. So some of you may know better than us. But yeah, Berggren, I'm very happy every time he comes up. You and I were super excited about this guy. We really thought that this would be his step forward year, breakout year for him. Not to come out and take over the league by storm, not to put up a point per game, but I think we had him at 55 points, 52 to 55 points on the year if he played 82 games, which is respectable. That's a solid number for a middle six forward, which is what we wanted out of him. But it's hard to say that he is actively better than anyone in our middle six right now, right? Mm-hmm. And the issue that starts to bring up is, well, then you start to hear, okay, well, let's start moving people like Fisher or Costin, because they're on the fourth line. And it's really tough to say that because of roles that they play. It feels like whenever we watch a Red Wings game with people, if one of our Red Wings get hit hard, you hear all the people say, okay, send Costin.
Where's Costin?
Yep. Go hit him, throw some gloves, make them pay for it, get them.
But as soon as you want Berggren called up, send down Costin.
And I'll hear out Fisher. I genuinely will. I like Fisher on the team on the fourth line. I like having at least a single true role player, forechecker, grinder, guy you can put on your PK if you need to. And the reason I'll hear it out is because I've been very impressed with the PK, like with our forwards on who we have. We have Raz, Kopp, Comfer, Veleno, Larkin. That's 5 forwards that I trust to do the job equal or better than Fisher. So yes, when it comes to doing that, I'll hear it out. Where you lose me is that now you're putting Berggren on a fourth line in the NHL, where he'll get what, 8 to 10 minutes in a game, 11 if he's lucky, because he's probably not sniffing the power play with the other players that you have on this team ahead of him, especially with someone like Kane that you're putting on the right side, or Woolman that you're trying to put on the right side so that they can take that shot. That's where suddenly it doesn't make sense to bring Bergeron up just to put him on the fourth line. So even when you break one barrier of fighting an argument on whether you should bring someone up or not, you lose it on the next one. And like I also saw the names like Perron, and I think that it wouldn't be unfair as much as we like him and we see the potential of what he can be. Sprong, is there a point in the season where you say, you know, a little older Sprong versus a younger Bergeron, who we think you could almost put them in similar spots to succeed offensively? I could see that at some point in the season. Yes, I could see that being the spot for Bergeron if Sprong is just flat up, or straight up not working for us, right? Do you think that could be a spot for him?
Why him for that spot?
Simply because he would be put into a spot where he can perform offensively and not be given PK responsibilities and isn't necessarily going to get a ton of power play time at the same time. He's going to get ice time. If you're looking for a place to squeeze Bergeron in and Sprong isn't working out, it feels like
Yeah.
you could swap them.
I think that's mainly because of what we said about Sprong being. I think we had high expectations for Sprong in general, which really sucks because I still feel like he could hit it, but now he's not even hitting the posts that he was hitting before. So before it was he's not scoring as much, but man, he's coming close. He's firing the puck, and that kind of fizzled. I'm not sure where that went with Sprong. So yeah, you know what? That's not really an avenue that I've thought about much, but now that you say it,
there's a world. There's a world where that's like
I kind of see
an
opportunity for Bergeron to play if Sprong kind of gets out of the way, or maybe he needs a healthy scratch or something. Like if you were looking for a way to do that, yeah, I could totally see that being an opportunity. Yes.
Yeah, that's me simply looking at our scoring wingers, who's performing the worst. Find the spot for Bergeron going. Right now it is Sprong. It's not Veleno. It's not Fabry. I mean, Raz plays more than just that role too. So like, yeah, just looking at our scoring wingers with that. The other thing that comes up is bringing up Edvinsson. Right now we have 7 NHL caliber defensemen. It's difficult for anyone to come into this chat and say like, oh, Petrie shouldn't be in the NHL. Hall shouldn't be in the NHL. Mata shouldn't be in the NHL. Ghost shouldn't be in the NHL. Sherratt shouldn't be in the NHL. That's a really hard argument on each and every single one of them, right?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I can break down the cycle of this player call-up desire. So we have 2 examples that we can provide, or at least that I can bring to the table that just I don't even really have like I'm not even trying to push a point here, but it is very interesting to see how different this could be. You've got someone like Seider who played, pro leagues in Europe for a bit. Then he came in and played the AHL, and then he gets called up and he has a Calder performance. And I mean, I'll get your opinion. How do you think Seider is now?
I think Seider is I would say a great defenseman in the NBA.
Okay. And so all of what I just said has resulted in what you believe to be a great NHL defenseman, and it worked. What was Raymond's path?
He went straight into the NHL.
He went straight into the NHL, excelled, and then kind of fizzled.
Yep.
And now we're in a position where people are pointing at Raymond as someone who needs to step up. He was someone who was, I don't want to use the word rushed, but it is the best word I can think of at the time at the moment. He was given a direct path because Steve saw something in him and he showed it immediately. Now he's in a position where he's not playing as that same guy anymore. People know who he is. He's playing, when he went straight to the NHL before, he was in, like, I'm assuming, I don't remember this, but I'm assuming he was in some middle to lower lines. I'm assuming he wasn't a top line guy. If he was, well, then I don't know what to tell you. The point is that nobody knew who he was. So whether it was low lines or not, he wasn't being, I mean, it was the worst of the Red Wings. So nobody was really being taken. No one was being heavy scouted as we need to watch out for this guy. Later in the season, he started to fizzle a little bit. The next year, sophomore year, definitely wasn't the same guy. And now this year, everyone's saying that Raymond needs to be worked on. Now, that opinion that you have on Raymond, that like if you are someone who thinks, oh, he needs to step up and also we need to call up these other guys, maybe that first 30, 40 game stretch of being good wasn't worth it, and maybe wasn't what Raymond needed for his growth. There is a world where Lucas Raymond played in the AHL for the first 2 years and got his first call up this year. What is he, 21, 22?
Yeah, he's down there.
There's a world where we're talking about Raymond the way we're talking about Bergeron. And when he does get his call up, he has had a chance to develop more and on a high line of against players that are more at his level. I don't know this to be true, but my point is to open your eyes on the different paths that players have taken. And you were so excited for Raymond to play immediately. We all were. Team was awful. We were looking for anything to be happy about, anything to bring us hope. And in the moment, it felt like we had a stud. I don't look at Lucas Raymond, and if you do at home, good for you. We disagree. I don't look at Lucas Raymond anymore as that stud anymore. Not saying he can't be, but he's simply not right now. And there is a possibility that his growth was altered potentially in a negative way by being that immediate call up, having a spark that essentially cemented him so he hasn't had to go back. And now he's just kind of stuck up there, continually being thrown in these top line situations. Yeah, he gets little waves of some scoring streaks, but I don't think Lucas Raymond is playing at a level that any of you thought he would be at year 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think every single one of you watching saw the way Raymond was playing in year 1 and thought we were going to have a 40-plus goal scorer by his 3rd season.
Yeah, I would say that I was pretty close to that camp. I would say that I definitely expected him to be better than what he has been the last 2 years.
And so the whole point of that whole thing is that the player that was kept down in Mo Seider is a great defenseman, won a Calder Trophy. And the player that went straight in was exciting for a flash. And now all I'm seeing is I still have hope for him. I still think he's going to grow. He's young enough. I'm just looking at what you guys are saying. And he's the one that you're pointing like, well, we really need more from him. Maybe you would have. If he was given a chance to grow a little bit differently and not thrown straight into the fire.
Yeah. And,
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a real good point. And it's difficult to look at each situation and say, like, oh, this is going to happen for that person. The fact is, none of us know.
Right.
That no one knows. The front offices don't know. There's a lot of, luck in person by person basis that goes into how these players are going to perform. But as of like this moment, this roster has been built, and Steve Yzerman and the player development team probably came together and made the decision. So the people that know significantly more than us, and that we say we trust, and we recognize what Steve has built in the past, have come together to say that it is better to be playing these defensemen right now. It is better to be playing these forwards than to have these two in the NHL. If I firmly believe that if they were unpassable to put in the NHL right now, they would be here. They would be up in the NHL right now if they were giving the signs of, yeah, this is a Calder winner. This is a 55, 60 point guy that we just have down in the AHL because, well, we signed Sprong.
I think there's a question you can ask yourself as a fan. Ask yourself, try to pick any player, pick any move you want made that isn't being made. Doesn't matter which one. It could be a call up, it could be a send down, it could be a trade away, it could be a trade for, it could be a goalie being started, it could be anything you want. Find something that the Wings are not doing that you want done. Ask yourself, truly ask yourself, why isn't Yzerman doing this? And don't just ask it to the point of where the only answer you get to yourself is, I don't know. Try to see what Yzerman might be seeing or why he is making a decision he's making. And if you do that, if you give that your best shot and you come to the conclusion that he's just doing it, it's just a bad call, that he's just wrong, write that down and move on to the next one. Move on to your next one. Do the same thing. And if you get to a point where you're just telling yourself that Yzerman is just wrong in all these aspects, I think you don't like our GM. I don't think at this point, I don't think you like having Steve Yzerman as a GM and there's just a bunch of other stuff that's going wrong. Maybe that's a simpler answer that you can hang on to is I don't think Steve's the right guy for the GM spot, because I just went down my list of 5 things I want to happen, and I genuinely can't envision a world where that would be a good decision or why Steve would feel this way. So for that reason, I don't like him as a GM. Maybe that can help simplify some people's thoughts here, because every time you and I have done this, we've done this exercise plenty of times where someone will get signed, something will happen, and we have our initial emotional reaction. Justin Hall's a great example. We're like, what are we doing? And then we looked into it. We tried to see what Steve saw, and we were able to. We were able to at least see what we believed he saw. And so far, in the case of Justin Hall, that's kind of worked out. It's kind of been exactly what we thought was going to happen. So try that and see if you just don't like our GM.
You're giving me flashbacks to why is Justin Applicator still on this team? I can't figure out why Kenny Holland is awful. That's exactly the conclusion I came to every time. I was like, I don't know why he's here.
At the end of the day, yeah, I think maybe that'll help simplify it for some folks, that you can just say, I just think Steve is wrong here.
Yeah. Yes,
and if you've got 5 things for me. And if you've got 5 things that I'll give you that, and you go down your list and you just think Steve is doing so, I can't see any reason why Steve would do this. You might not like Steve Yzerman as your GM. And well, I got bad news for you. This dude's going to have to literally burn down the arena to get fired.
Yeah.
So the only person he has the most secure job in sports as of this year. And the only person that would have been comparable would have been Jim Harbaugh. Of just like, he can do no wrong. Well, apparently he could. Apparently he could.
But even when he doesn't, he didn't.
Yeah, we'll see next year. But yeah, Steve's not going anywhere anytime soon. So you either like him at this point or you don't. But the next point being, this one's a hot one for a lot of people. Easiest. But that's kind of the point, is that it's so simple to point at this. But everybody loves to point at the goaltending.
Detroit specifically, man. Our fans they have to be the worst in the league with it. I just can't believe anyone does it more than us. I can't. I've been around it for too long.
I don't know if I buy that.
No,
I don't know if I buy that.
Hasek, Osgood, Howard, Husso, all of them blame for why this franchise wasn't doing good of the team. Time.
So like you're not connected to any other fan base the way you're connected. I think it's just fan bias, but everybody wants to say Husso sucks. Cool. Lyon needs to start. At this point, I've seen people saying why I'd rather play Reimer than Husso. Well, guess what? You got Reimer and Hutchinson right now. The whole rotate. I mean, we just talked maybe a few weeks ago about how we liked having 3 goalies. That immediately got taken away from us. We talked about the positives of being able to ride whatever high you got. Who could have predicted that Husso and Lyon would get injured in within 3 games of each other or 2 games of each other?
It's so sad. It's so frustrating. But it feels like, Josh, when we go to bat for these goalies, it feels like people think that we're saying they're up for the Vezina. It feels like people think that we're talking about this guy is the greatest goalie that the Wings have ever fielded. And we're not.
Not even close.
We're so far from that we can recognize the huge holes in Husso's game. That low glove side is brutal. Lyon, incredibly aggressive. Reimer, very inconsistent for us. People were calling for Reimer over Husso after Husso had back-to-back games against the Bruins and Rangers where he posted up 925s, and Reimer had his game out in Sweden and he was ducking away from the puck in overtime. Okay, it's this really weird attachment, emotional attachment that people are making to each one of these individual goalies and just putting them on the pedestal. And when you say, hey, everyone's kind of in the same boat right now, they look at the one that you like and say, no, that person's absolute garbage. When they're all playing relatively similar. Lyon had a really hot streak. Lyon was doing well for us. Lyon should have been 1A. Huso should have been 1B. Reimer should have been 1C. Like, you should have still just been following the hot hand. And we bet on 3 horses, and right now 2 of the horses are out with bum legs. And the next one is just on a cold streak right now. Like, Reimer didn't play well tonight. He didn't play bad, but you can also see the inconsistencies. It's if you don't simply look at a stat sheet and you watch a goalie and you see the rebounds they give up, you see the big saves that they make, and you can truly just evaluate it more than looking at that stat line, you'll start to recognize that we have 3 mid goalies, that any one of them any day could be the guy that needs to go. And for whatever reason, it feels like everyone's so quick to just jump oh, that's the goalie's fault, when we gave up like 2 2-on-0s, 2 breakaways, and a 3-on-1. Those are core defensive team problems. I said it before in another video. After that game with Huso, Josh, not a single Red Wings player went in that locker room thinking to themselves, what was Huso doing? They went, man, we really blew it for him.
And it kept the game up on the side here. The Wings just lost 5-2 to the Jets. And the 5th goal is a great example of that, where it was just a quick backdoor 1T, no defenseman on him. Easy goal. Like, they just showed it again. Just an easy. It's not like he's giving up like weak goals. And this is where, fan bases are. God, man, I should have tried harder in hockey, because I swear, playing defense in the NHL, man, the only thing you don't get crap for is getting scored on. Everyone blames the goalie. Yeah. You could be you could be like a pretty mid defenseman, and they're only going to hate you if you're paid too much. Yeah. No one's calling out our bad defensemen that aren't paid a lot.
But hold on,
they're only calling out the ones who are paid.
I should have tried harder too, because if my entire offensive squad of 12 people only score 1 goal a game, we should win that game in Detroit.
It's crazy.
I could be a forward on the Red Wings and just be like, hey, like, we scored a goal. What are you guys doing?
All you have to do is give up 0 goals.
Yeah, put up a shutout,
game.
Please. What are you doing here?
There's a grass is always greener issue with fans and goalies, where everyone's favorite goalie is the one that isn't playing. if your team is struggling, everybody wants the goalie that they heard about last Tuesday, who just signed with their AHL. Give them a shot. Like, I bet there's tons of you that want Johansson to start from the AHL. There's a ton of you that want that. And I'm sure a lot of you really feel like, give Johansson a shot. But the fact is, I just made that name up. And you just want anybody who isn't in these top 3 right now.
It's funny, you named the name of a defenseman, and I was like, where is he going with this? What's this twist? But yeah, go on.
Some of you want anybody that isn't who just got scored on. So, like, that's why, like, it's really tough to take the goaltending side that seriously, because the reason is it's never technical. It's never their actual performance or how they're approaching a play, how they're handling a play. And I knew that the moment somebody in a watch along commented on the way Huso approached a 2-on-0.
Yeah,
I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's what we're gonna critique. Yeah, I don't know, Huso really could have been better on that 2-on-0 when we were on a power play. All right. Well, apparently we're not even going to have a real discussion on that one. But the idea that the goalie that isn't playing or has played twice and did decent is your next stud. It's easy, it's simple, and it's tired. Hold some people accountable on defense. That's going to be like the whole blaming the goalie situation is not something that Billy or I are going to jump on until it's rightfully so. Yep. If we go into a game and we give up 3-4 easy goals, and that's why we lose, 4-3, that's a situation where you blame that goalie. It's like, hey, the defense did their job of forcing unideal scoring opportunities, and you still let in 3, you still let in 4. But our defense has been bad. Mm-hmm. They've had shining moments. The defense has just put the team in such a bad situation. And this is great. I hope you don't have anything else to say on goalies, because this is a perfect segue into the next one. The power plays.
Tired.
have completely contributed to this whole goalie situation. Our power play giving up so many shorthanded goals and shorthanded opportunities, breakaways, 2-on-1s, 2-on-0s. I mean, this has got to be fan bias, but I would love to see a stat. How many teams go on the power play and then give up this many scoring opportunities against them?
It's gotta be
We got to be in the
it's
top
gotta
10 at
be
least,
tough.
right?
Yeah, it's gotta be looking real bad for us. And honestly, in this, like, I hate to say it, part of this is a Kane problem. Kane is a little slow. When we're putting him in the spot on the flank to be a guy that can, float back and hold a defensive position, and typically the PK guys are kind of more of the fresh guys on a roster, kind of more speedy guys, more defensive minded, of course. But I mean, they can beat Kane. Kane is not fast right now. So, like, it's definitely contributing to it, but it's also just very questionable decisions with the puck by our quarterbacks, with who they're passing to, when they're passing, why they're trying to force it in situations. Everyone's just kind of thinking forward, no one's thinking back. And the power play is what I think I'm most passionate with when it comes to this subject of what needs to change. And we briefly talked about it with coaching, and there are people calling for Lallone's head, like we mentioned back there. I'm not, but from what I understand, is Alex Tanguay is one of our assistant coaches who is responsible for the power play. I have grown, and if you've listened to our channel for even, a month at this point, you understand that I am tired of our power play being predictable. It worked at the start. It's going to work against certain teams with their penalty kill strategies. You are in a heavy advantage in these situations, and it feels like we're becoming one-dimensional in the most advantageous position that you can realistically be multiple times in a game of hockey. And if you're predictable in those spots, it becomes very easy to stop. And what was winning us games early in the season?
Power play.
Power play. What is definitely started to slow down? Like, you can still say, oh, we're top 13 in the league still. Guys, we started off shooting like 50% on the power play. It was insane. It was unsustainable. And we joked about it. We mentioned it. But if you know anything about statistics, is if you have that high outlier at the start, as time goes on, it's gonna, if you're doing poorly in the future, it's gonna drop, and eventually you'll hit the average. Okay. But that last bit of time away from your hot start, that's what's going to be important, because that's what you're projecting back out to the future. Don't take that single data point at the end and say, oh, well, this is our average and this is what we can expect. You have to look at the tendencies in it. I'm telling you right now, like, I'm just thinking like stock markets. No one's buying a stock that's dropping and they're like, oh, well, it's still better than every other stock. No, it's dying. Okay.
Yep.
So let's look at this in this moment and start to realize what is going wrong. We love to pass that puck down low. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. You have a 5-on-4. It's a big advantage for yourself. When you move the puck down low and all of the guys on the penalty kill can come to the hash marks or lower, 3 or 4 of them typically, you are then, in our strategy, putting yourself in a 3-on-3 or a 4-on-4. Your advantage is gone. And our quarterback, our guy up high, we don't use him in these scenarios, so he's useless. There are too many times on a power play that you can look around and say, you're not a scoring threat, you're not a scoring threat, you're not a scoring threat. You are simply covered. You are in a position to shoot, but you're covered. And you see Patrick Kane look around like, do I have to try to force this to DeBrincat again? Do I have to try to weave this through 3 defensemen sticks flying up and down? I want to be able to shoot. You can see Patrick Kane would love to shoot, but we moved Joe Veleno down to the bottom of the goal line to where he's now just a left-handed shot on the left side of the net and not a shooting threat whatsoever. And what does Kane do? He passes down to him. What does that mean? The defenseman then moves between Veleno and the net and takes away a passing lane. Veleno suddenly has nothing other than to pass it back to Kane. Okay, that's literally his only option. Goes
Okay,
back to Kane, and it's
so
just
we're
this
able,
cycle of
right, but we're
doing
able to say
nothing.
this and make it sound like, and this is where I give you the exercise of what do they see as the opportunity there? Like, yes, we can say there's nothing, but there has to be, right? There has to be a goal that they're trying to achieve with that. So with him sliding down there, is there, I see two options. There's a goal that we aren't seeing them achieve so that we don't understand it, or in practice, when they keep them in front of the net, someone like Valeno, whoever, sucks at tipping pucks.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not working. Maybe like, yeah, this is why aren't you just doing this? Well, we tried that in practice and he's ass at it. The puck
Well,
keeps either just hitting them or it's not like, or maybe our defensemen aren't shooting around him very well. I don't know.
yeah.
I'm just saying it feels that's a situation where it feels so simple that it can't be that simple.
I think it's fundamentally broken. I think it's just fundamentally wrong that like you just keep putting these players back into positions where they only have one option. Like what Valeno's
Mhm.
options realistically are there are Kane, either Larkin, I believe sometimes we have like Raymond in the high slot, or DeBrincat on the far side. But if you already have the 4-on-4 back down low, those passes are gone. And we're like, he's not going to feed it back through the middle to just go hit our quarterback at the top of the play. Like that's not why you're putting the puck down there. So you're looking for one of those three options to be good. But if you have three defenders breaking down into the two guys that you're looking for, your advantage is gone. So you can force teams into keeping that open if you create a threat up top, and you need to be like able to have a dual threat on the power play. And I look at the New York Rangers for this. They have Adam Fox up top. He can take that shot. He can shoot at Chris Kreider, who stands in front of the net, takes vision away. That's a threat. It's a big threat. They have Panarin on the flank for a big one-timer. They have Zibanejad on the other side that can have that big shot too. They have a guy floating between in the middle with Kreider to be kind of that bumper spot if they need him to be there. We have pieces to do this. We have guys that can fulfill these roles. It just feels like we are fully committing ourselves to down low passes, beat a team that way. But if you can create, Ghost to be the threat up top, Cider to be the threat up top with shots and taking vision away, which is very key in it. You don't necessarily need to tip it. You can put it on net. It can hit a goalie's chest and it can become a rebound. But if they see it the entire way, you just see them swallow it. It can hit their pad. It can become a rebound. And that's when you can have Cat and Kane crashing the nets. When you can have a Valeno sitting on the back end. It's when it can pop out to Larkin in the middle. Right now, it really feels like we just compress everything down low and say, this is going to work or this is a waste of 2 minutes. It's just what it feels like every single power play. If you can develop a dual threat, it's going to open up the threat up top. It's going to open up the
It's not
threat
even
down
exciting
low.
to be on the power play at this point. Like
It's really tough.
It has been a tough time. At this point in the video, if you haven't already put your comment, shame on you. Go do it right now. Answer the question really quick, because we're going to give each of our final answer to this. And if you maybe skipped ahead and you missed the prompt, the question is a two-parter, and you have to answer both parts, or your second part doesn't make any sense, or it's hard to evaluate if we even agree or disagree. Part A, what is your goal for the team this year? Part B, what changes would you make to achieve that goal specifically? Simple as that.
It's
Hopefully
very
you've already
important
done
you answer number one. It's very important you tell us which number one is so we can like evaluate.
For me, my two main ones, and which now we've kind of talked more, I kind of have a third, but my general is my goal for the year is I want to win. And we've talked about the culture change a lot. I am passionate about the culture change. And it's mostly because we've seen it. And those of you who are Lions fans, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're a Lions fan, what happened last year? Team had an awful start. What could they have done? The team could have tanked out, and we'd have 2 top 5 picks, top 6, whatever picks. Would have been great for the rebuild. would have gotten 2 stud players. Who knows what we would have ended up with? But they didn't do that. The Lions played through the year, ended up with a winning record. They found themselves in the final week of the year with a game with nothing to play for. They couldn't make the playoffs by the time their final game started. All they had on the table was to beat the Green Bay Packers and keep them out of the playoffs. Now, why am I bringing up football? Because the Lions went out there knowing they couldn't make the playoffs and knowing it would only hurt their draft stock. And they kept trying to win. And they did. They won, and it was a change in the culture. It helped the players that were already on the team buy into the direction where we were heading. And it was convincing enough to bring in meaningful free agents to help turn this team around. And I'll tell you what, I'm no professional athlete. You don't got to look at me for more than a second to know that. But I'll tell you what, if I'm considering what team I'm going to, and I'm trying to join a team, maybe I'm good to go, I'm in my prime, and I'm going to play for some, or maybe I'm even about to enter my prime. If I'm looking at 2 teams, and one mailed it in at Christmas and was done for the year because they were only in a wild card spot, and the other team fought through it and clinged on to what they had and made sure to make the playoffs and show that they were heading in the right direction, guess which team I'm going to? I'm not wasting 5 years of my career. I'm not signing a 4-year contract, a 5-year contract with a team that's going to give up 3 months in if it doesn't look sexy enough, if it doesn't look like we're going to win the cup for sure. I want to join the team that isn't going to waste my time. So I believe I'm very passionate about the culture change and not being seen as the dead wings anymore. And you do that by finally putting yourself back in the playoffs. So now that you get where I'm coming from on what my goal is, win games, I want to adjust our power play. We've talked already plenty on that. I'm just gonna label the things. We don't have to dive deep into them because we already basically did that in the whole rest of the video. I want to fix this power play, which leads to coaching. Tanguay, who's apparently the one in charge of the power play, change it or he's got to go. I want to win right now. And his power play strategy sucks. It was great for 2 weeks. Teams figured it out. It sucks now. It's not protective at all. It leaves way too many opportunities for the other team to score on us. And we're not scoring on them. And that's supposed to be what happens when you're on the power play. I'm not worried about the goaltending because I don't see an opportunity to bring in another one. Why am I going to stress on it? Sure, start whoever's hot. If it's Lion, I'm Team Lion that week. If it's Husso, if Husso's hot, that's who I am that week. Play whoever's hot. There's no goalie you're going to go and acquire. Not right now, anyway. I'm not worried about that. The other thing is the defense. I don't know what needs to change. I don't believe it's an AHL call-up, but if Yzerman believes it is, and Edvinsson truly is this guy who's going to make a difference, sure. But something needs to change there. Something on the defense needs to change. That I don't have anything for, but what I do have is the lines on forward need to be solidified. We are too far into the season to be shaking things up this much, this often. Chemistry is huge in hockey. You don't have to play that much hockey to realize you play significantly better with the guy you played, a few months with than the guy you just got thrown together with on a line last Tuesday. Figure out your lines. If that's a Lalone thing, which I have to imagine final say on lines is going to be Lalone for your 5v5, get some lines together. Solidify a top line at the bare minimum. That feels like easy pickings here. I don't feel like establishing your top line should be difficult at all. I'm not even saying I need your top 3 solidified, even your top 2. Start by solidifying a top line of this team that can build and grow together. Go out there, win some games, bring guys up when you need to, or when you feel like they've made enough of an impact in the AHL that they would make your team better right now. I'm not tossing away the year. My summary, establish your lines, fix your power play. If that means Tanguay's got to go, but fix your power play. Change the strategy altogether. Your power play strategy just sucks. And do whatever you have to do on defense to not make your goalies completely get left out to dry consistently and win some games.
Mine is pretty similar. Going into this season, I still predicted that this team would miss the playoffs, and I knew that there were going to be highs and lows. And I think I'm much more general apologetic in the grand scheme of things maybe than you are. I want to see us play meaningful hockey games at the end of the season. That to me was going to be a successful year. Someone today in the chat asked me if we were happy with how this team has performed so far. I'm content. I think this is what I expected. I did not expect as high highs. I didn't expect as low lows as of recently. But that feels like hockey teams are going to go through that in a year. And it's about how long you spend in each on whether you're going to make the playoffs or not. And I think the number one thing to get us out of this lull right now of scoring 1 or 2 goals a game in the last, what, 2, 3 games or so, right? For
Mhm.
how hot our offense has been, my number one issue is the power play. We have pieces. We have really talented pieces in each single role that I feel like should be performing, and they aren't. And that's why I take a look at the coaching. That's why I look at Alex Tanguay and I say, there's no way that this shouldn't be working. In the past, you were able to look at our power play and be like, ooh, Nemestikov's on our flank. Ugh. I don't know if that's going to work, but now you're able to look and say that could be Woolman. That's Kane. On the other flank, that's Perron. That's DeBrinket. In our bumper, that's Raymond. That's Larkin. In front of the net, I mean, I still stand by. I think you could put a Costin. I think you could put a Raz. You could put Veleno. And for our quarterback, you have Ghost in Cider. These are all pieces that can do the job and they can fulfill multiple roles, and we aren't doing it. So when I look and I see like my biggest issue, it's absolutely the power play. And I think that in turn solves some of the goaltending issues that we see. A lot of the games we were winning 4-3, 5-4, and we always said to ourselves, man, it feels good knowing that if Husso has a bad night, if Line has a bad night, if Reimer has a bad night, these guys can still score. The last feeling I want to have, and it's what I felt the last week and a half, is Dead Wings 2.0 of we gave up 2 goals, this game's over. We will lose in overtime if we score 2. We're going to lose if we score 1 or 0. Like, that is an era that I want to forget, and we have been able to forget for periods of time. And the key to it is that power play. Yes, I want to see lines solidify some more, but we were successful when they were still jumbling. Like, it was there. It would be nice to see that happen. I don't want to see us waving and cutting players right now, because I firmly believe that the highs that we've seen out of this team can be maintained. Maybe not to the highest of those highs, but we just have talent throughout our lineup. Whether you personally like them or not, each one of these players, I think, on the roster so far, except for maybe Fisher, I think I can look at each one and remember a game where they had a huge impact on the scoreboard. I think a lot of teams would love that. I think Edmonton would love to look at their third and fourth lines and say those guys impacted the scoreboard. I think Toronto would love to say those guys impacted the scoreboard. And that's what I said made this team different going into this season, is that those guys can. Right now, they're not. Players aren't going to stay hot through an entire season. Teams aren't going to stay hot through an entire season. Last year, the worst team to make the Eastern Conference playoffs had a 50 or a .561 win percentage. We're not that far behind it right now. I'm not saying that's going to get you in again. I think it very much could. I think it's a fine bar to set and look for, but you're moving the org in the right direction. And it's what you said, build the culture. I think that that plays a nice part. I think that's why some players already did come here. I think that's why Kane signed here. I think Cat played a big part in it too. But I mean, I don't want to give up on the team. I think we're in a spot where call ups, cuts, and waves and trades are just about not an option unless you're ready to give up on someone completely. I don't know how many teams are going to be looking to buy one of those players. And if we're in the position that we want to be, they shouldn't be sold. And yeah, any trade that you make, if we're trying to like get a young player off another team, you have to involve enough pieces that like you still don't have to just waive another player for doing it. It feels like we're in a bit of a mess right now. Overall, I would still just say If you fix the power play, I think a few of these other issues become non-issues again, and I think that's why this team is currently in the lull.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like some of these issues do self-correct. Not self. They correct others. They
Mhm.
addressing the defense helps your goaltending.
Yes.
Addressing your goalie doesn't help your defense. You know, if even if you put Lyon out there and he's a stud, that doesn't make your defense better.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you want Husso to succeed. You want him to play well. It's. I agree. It feels like there is a mess of there's a mess of issues that can all that everybody's got their own solution. Everybody's pointing to different things. But if there's one way to conclude, and I know this is a longer video. Props to any of you that made it this far, and maybe we were in the car or whatever. We're gonna close out on a positive. And I'm gonna let you know right now that this video, the fact that we can even talk about this, the fact that the team is even good enough or relevant enough that you even care enough to listen to this pod or this video, wherever you are, it's a positive. This team was not even worth following for a few years. Like it was tough to watch. These are like it was games that weren't even remotely entertaining, and most of the guys you knew weren't going to be on the team when the team was relevant. And we're here, so just be happy to be here. We
Hit
are
that
at
subscribe
least
button.
just literally just take in and enjoy the fact that we are watching a team that even matters, because they didn't matter so recently. They did not matter. And the fact that any of us care enough to nitpick lines and power plays and which goalie is starting, who to call up, it's good to be back at a spot where any of that means a damn thing.
Mhm.
Hope they turn the ship around. See you in the next one.